actually co-hosting this event with Rand. I'm pointing as if Randall can see me.
I see you. I see you.
With Randall Clark from the director of the SEEK program. And, we are grateful to have Marcus Richardson, who is the expert on everything financial aid here for Brooklyn College, to come field your questions. And so at this moment, I'll just pass it over to you, Marcus.
Hi, so as David mentioned, my name is Marcus Richardson. I have been and have 14 years of experience in the financial aid office at Brooklyn College. And so I know that COVID-19 has raised a lot of concerns regarding financial aid eligibility, how the impacts of credit, no credit may weigh in on my choices, and what does that mean from my awards, my financial aid eligibility. Also, I can answer any questions regarding availability of funding for summer. So if you have any questions regarding that, I'll be more than happy to take those questions. But I just want to start with a general overview so that we can set some context, and maybe that will also spur some additional questions. So the first thing that I want to, hold on, I'm just getting some headsets. And so sorry, just give me 1 second, let me get set up. Okay. So the first thing that I think that folks should be aware of is I have been getting some questions from students about credit, no credit. How does that impact my financial aid? So as of right now, there's a lot of regulatory relief for students when it comes to impacts for COVID-19. So I would say that right now, that's sort of like a next step. The first step should be focusing on your courses right now and doing as well as you can to complete. And Randall, please feel free to jump in here from an academic perspective. So once you get your grades, then you have the decision to make, or you can make it now, but really any grade that you get from an A all the way to a D will bear credit, so that you'll have the choice to get the credit for that course, but not necessarily the grade. Now, with no credit, let's say you get a grade that's not great, like an F. You don't want that factoring into your GPA, and that's the no credit option. So you're not getting that F on your transcript, you're not getting that impacting on your GPA. Now, from a financial aid perspective, students have to meet a certain GPA at the end of every spring semester. So the impacts for, let's say, no credit would be that it wouldn't have any negative impact on your GPA perspective. However, if you have been impacted by COVID-19, which every student pretty much is, that transition from an in-person learning platform to online, we then have a form. But I don't want students to panic to think that what I need to fill out that form, it's only for students that are negatively impacted due to COVID-19. So if you've lost eligibility for, let's say you've failed satisfactory academic progress, what that means is that, let's say your GPA or your credits aren't where they're supposed to be at that point. We know exactly who those students are. So what we will do is we will communicate with those students, provide them with the form, they submit it back to us, and we can restore their eligibility and they can move forward. Same thing for our federal programs like Pell, eligibility for loans, etc. The same is also for the state, for TAP, for Excelsior. So we will identify any students that are impacted in that way. We'll reach out to them and say, please fill out this form, give us some documentation, and we'll restore your eligibility. Simple as that. Now, when it comes to overall lifetime usage, one nice thing that the federal government did actually is if you were impacted by COVID-19 and you weren't able to complete courses, you didn't take the credit option, there are mechanisms in place that we are doing on your behalf. There's nothing that students need to do. We are reporting to the federal government that that student did not complete those courses. We have proof of impact due to COVID-19. And let's say your Pell usage for the spring semester, that will not count towards your overall lifetime usage. So that will almost be wiped away or given as a bonus because of the current global health crisis that we're going through. That's really nice, because that means that you're not wasting any lifetime Pell eligibility, let's say, or subsidized loan eligibility because of this. So you're taking that option will not if you got a Pell payment for the spring, that will not be factored against your remaining usage in the future. So think of it as either being wiped away or as a bonus, but only for students that where credits are not completed and there were impacts due to COVID-19. And again, we will reach out to those students directly, because it wouldn't make sense to communicate to the entire student population when it may not impact them or it may not be applicable. So feel free to ask your questions in the chat, or you can unmute yourself and ask the question. I'll be happy to answer them. And I just want to talk a little bit about summer. So summer, it's in terms of, let's talk about Pell. Pell, about 2 years ago, the federal government reinstated what we call year-round Pell. That meant that summer gets its own dedicated Pell Award. And we have over 10,000 students that have Pell eligibility that they could use in the summer. And eligibility ranges by student. So one of the common questions that we get is how much will I receive, right? Because you want to know, you want to plan and use that information to see how you can finance a summer course. What I would say, because it's so custom, it's so individual to the student, because my family composition, my family income will be different from yours. So your eligibility will be different as well. If you're interested in summer, you can register for those courses, and within 72 hours, your Pell Award will show up on your student center in Cuny first. You'll be able to see the award. You'll be able to plan accordingly. You could say, you know what, I can't, this is not affordable to me, or it is. And then you can make that decision. And that will be done well in advance of the first day of the summer semester. So I think that's the easiest way. The other way, you could always reach out to your dedicated and assigned financial aid advisor. Brooklyn College is the only school in Cuny that assigns a dedicated financial aid advisor to every single financial aid applicant. And so what that means is that you can reach out to that person, shoot them a quick question. You can ask more individual questions about, can you give me an estimate of how much I personally may be able to receive, and they'd be happy to do that as well. If you need any instructions on how to find out who your financial aid advisor is, when I have a moment, I will get that link and put it in the chat, so you have that information to look up your advisor. It's in the BC web portal. So David, those are sort of some of the bigger topics or most frequent questions that the financial aid office is getting right now. So I just wanted to give a broad overview of that in hopes to spark some conversation or questions surrounding those issues, or not. The last thing I want to say is that for federal direct loans, for the summer and for fall 2020 and for spring 2021, that application opens up on Monday, May 4th. And we're using Brooklyn College. Thankfully, we had the foresight to move all of our forms online before the pandemic set in. So we were already moving to a remote document upload system, and we're thankful for that, so that students will not have to worry about submitting anything in person or trying to find a fax machine in this time. So that will be launched via our Dynamic Forms platform, where students will be able to log in securely and submit their loan applications. And the nice part about that is once you submit the application, you get communication throughout the process. It's not just the document upload system, it's also a communication tool. So you get an email confirming that your application was received and submitted. Then you get notification when it's completed. So that's an additional piece that can give students assurance that where am I in the process? Because in the past, you would submit your document at the Enrollment Services Center, it would be filtered to our processing unit, and then it would show up on your account. And that we would also put in notifications on students' to-do list to say that it's been received. But this is a nice way. This is an additional service that where students are actually getting an email about where they are in that process. So there is a question here. So using no credit doesn't affect financial aid, even if finances were already placed towards those credits. That's right. So if you choose no credit, your financial aid effectively will stay in place for the spring. We will reach out to those students to, if by chance, and I say this is a big if, because we have really great students at Brooklyn College. Very few of them actually end up in failing to be where they are from a credit perspective. That means that the credits that they have attempted, that they've earned at least roughly 2/3 of those credits. So very simple math, 9 credits. Typically, we're looking for at least 6 credits to be completed. Now you can extrapolate that out, 90 credits, 60 credits, etc. So, or you're falling below the GPA requirement. So if you're in one of those categories, we'll reach out to you and we'll tell you, hey, fill out this form, give us some documentation of the impact of COVID-19, and we will restore your aid eligibility. So to answer that question, it currently, thankfully, we've gotten regulatory relief that it will not have any negative impacts on your financial aid. Okay, so just want to please go over credit, no credit again. Randall, do you think you can give an overview of credit, no credit from your perspective, and then I will reiterate what I mentioned about financial aid again?
Yeah, sure. So credit, no credit, as I understand it, is you have the option to, once the semester is completed, right? So there's 2 things, right? So when up to May 14th, you have the option to withdraw from your courses, or right? After May 14th, you will now engage in completing your course. You will take your final, and then you will receive a grade by your professor in that course. Once you receive that grade, if it's a grade of A, B, C, or D, it is all and that's all including the pluses and minuses. That's eligible for the credit portion of the credit, no credit. So you can go in, you say you got a B minus, and you want to be an all A student, and you don't want this B minus to impact your cumulative GPA or your term GPA. You can select it for the credit option, and it will just show up that you got credit for the course. Now, say you got a D minus and you don't want that to impact your GPA either, you can select the credit option, and that will allow you to get the 3 or 4, whatever number of credits you would have earned for that course without it impacting GPA. Now, say you get an F grade, that's the only grade that NC applies to. You would then be given the coded with the no credit grade, and that will essentially what that does is it makes the course have no impact on your cumulative GPA, your term GPA, and obviously you wouldn't have earned any credit. So that's what they mean by no credit. The policy requires that once the grades are submitted to you, you will have 20 days to switch to credit, no credit. So you have to opt into this. There's been some back and forth, but my understanding is once you opt into credit, no credit, there's no switching out of it. I've heard, however, and we can verify, I'll work on verifying, is that you have until the deadline to switch credit, no credit to opt out of the credit, no credit should you have selected credit, no credit. But that's the policy as I understand it.
Right. And so to just overlay the financial aid piece on that is that you will not be held harm for choosing to use the no credit option. And as I mentioned, if any student is then going to be behind what we call satisfactory academic progress, and that looks at your attempted credit versus your earned credit, as well as your GPA, we will reach out to you to provide us by completing a simple form and restoring your aid eligibility. There's a question that says, what kind of documentation is needed to show you've been affected by COVID-19? One of the simplest forms of documentation is that you were in an in-person course. You have now switched to a remote learning environment, and your grade was impacted because of that. Other obvious documentation could be that you had changes in either that of your spouse or your parents' employment. Either getting laid off, etc. And you can provide documentation for that, whether you've submitted an application for unemployment insurance to the Department of Labor. The other impacts could be that you had to travel. You may be, let's say you had to travel back home, or there was housing insecurity or food insecurity, etc. There's a lot of documentation that can be submitted, but a lot of it is very straightforward. So the change from in-person to online learning impacts on employment, housing, food insecurities, technological insecurities, etc. Once you submit that documentation, if there's any questions, our office will always follow up to make sure that we cover what is required. Let's see if there are any other questions. So in terms of, there's another question that says, this doesn't really relate to COVID-19, but I have 11 credits left to graduate. Would I be eligible for part-time aid? Could you specify which semester you would be completing those additional credits, and the additional 11 credits? Would some of it be in the summer? Would some of it be in the fall? And to just generally answer that question, okay, so it's the fall. To generally answer that question, students who are Pell eligible, you can receive a Pell Award for being less than full-time. The award is prorated based on the number of credits that you're taking. I will also put a link in here. Let me share the link for how to look up your advisor. That's the link for how to look up your advisor. And I want to share the link for Pell eligibility. So. And here's the link for Pell eligibility. So that link, that chart breaks down and will tell you, based on your EFC, what your Pell Award will be for the fall if you're taking 11 credits. You would not be eligible for TAP, as TAP is a full-time award, but you could be eligible for aid for part-time students or APTS. You could be eligible for federal direct lending as well. There's another question regarding, so students writes the letter. So right now it's a very simple form. There is a text box where you can write in any sort of situational details, and then an option for you to upload any form of documentation. Very simple. We know that there are a lot of challenges that our students are facing right now. We're not trying to have this be another sort of very complicated process. The form is literally 1 page long. Most of that is just your name, your EMPL ID, other identifying information, a paragraph type text box to let us know what impacts you have, and then an upload field for the document. Very simple. Let's see here. So there's a question. So financial aid can cover the same course over and over again, or get greater score even if you choose credit? So that's a really good question. There is a repeat requirement for classes. So for federal aid, you can only take the same course over twice and receive federal financial aid for it. For the state, you can only repeat a grade. This is for TAP. So when I say federal and state, there are different regulations. You know, the federal aid is governed by federal rules and regulations. The state aid is governed by state aid rules and regulations. So for federal aid, you get twice, and then that's it. You can't get paid a third time. For the state, you can only get paid once. The only time the state will pay for a repeated course is if you need to get what we call a minimum grade requirement. And I know you guys have all seen that, where there's a course and says you must pass this course with at least a C, or you must pass it with at least a D, etc. So in terms of when you're just getting credit for that course, there is no grade associated with it. So if there's a min grade requirement, of course, we can pay for that again. But if there's no min grade requirement and you've gotten the credit for that course, then the answer would be no. So that's a really great question. Let's see if there's any other questions here. Not sure if this question is applicable here, but if you do credit for a major prerequisite course, does it count as satisfied to move on to the next class? Randall, maybe you can take that question. It seems more academic related.
Yeah, keep putting these blue light glasses on. So yes, it will be satisfied and you are allowed to move forward. I did post a link in the chat that shows frequently asked questions as it relates to the COVID virus credit no credit policy. But as it's been explained, any courses that get credit for will satisfy everything. There's no exception to that rule, and you don't have to worry about your grades being unmasked either. So there's no minimum grade or any of that you need to account for. The CR will cover it all.
All right, thanks. And just to,
yeah, I was the one to ask that question. So let's say the grade minimum was like C, but I got C minus and I converted to CR. It would satisfy that credit and just let me move on to the next class?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. But the thing they want you to be mindful of is if you need that course for a graduate study or a professional program or something to that effect, then masking the grade, you can't come back a year later and say, oh, my grad school wants to know what I got in this course. They're not going to change it on your transcript. It's a one-time, it's an all or nothing kind of deal.
Okay. So for example, I'm not personally doing this, but like, let's say you're not doing so hot in English 1010 for some reason. Like you get a D minus. And let's say there's some hypothetical grade that you need a D or higher.
You need a
to move
C
on
or
to
C minus or higher.
Or C minus or higher to move on to 1012. So if I do a CR for English 1010, then I can take 1012.
Correct.
On semester.
At least that's how it's been explained to me, and you'll see on the FAQ on the link I gave that question is explicitly answered. But again, the caveat to that is the recommendation, that minimum grade recommendation is given because they think you'll need to be at least this level of proficiency in order to succeed in the next level. So yes, you can move on, but you want to make sure that you're going to be able to function at that next level of course. But you can just keep that in mind. But yeah, you will be able to move on with the CR regardless of the grade. And that's a CUNY policy instated by the chancellor.
Thank you.
And I just wanted to clarify that there was one piece that I forgot regarding credit, no credit. The requirements, those minimum grade requirements that I mentioned before, as part of credit, no credit, if you elect to take the credit piece of it, you've gotten credit for that course, those min grades are waived. So you will move on and it will count towards graduation and moving you on to that next course. And I think, Vincent, that was part of what your question was asking as well.
Yes.
Okay. So the university has really put some really great options in place to help students to continue their academic momentum while they face the challenges of the COVID-19, etc. So that's a really great accommodation. Let's see here. Where can I see credit, no credit options when I register for class? Randall, that may be in your wheelhouse again.
Yeah. So it's not that you register, but when the course grades are given, because again, you're not doing the credit no credit option before the semester ends. This is an after semester action. And what you'll see is when you go into your CUNY first, for each course, it'll ask you whether or not you want to switch from credit to credit, or if you want to select credit, no credit for each course.
Great. There's a question that says, can you send a mass email with all the links categorized for us? Yes, and we will be sending out a lot of communications coming up regarding summer eligibility, regarding any impacts on credit, no credit. So we'll definitely get that out. Also, the financial aid website is a really great tool. So yeah, always going to brooklyn.cuny.edu/financial aid. All of the latest information and important deadlines are posted there. So that's another really great resource. And you know, David mentioned he'll also send all of the links. So those are all of the questions in the chats. Does anyone have any additional questions?
So just to clarify, you said for like a student who's the main thing was in terms of documentation for a student where they're selecting, they didn't do well as a result of just switching to online platform. The documentation would just be what the letter from the student stating I had difficulty with, I didn't sign up for an online course and then move to online was beyond my skill base or something to that effect.
Or yeah, or just it was challenging, you know, I had to, you know, acclimate to that type of learning module, you know, anything along those lines that's a direct impact from COVID-19. The only reason why we switched to an online model for the spring was due to impacts of the virus in New York City.
Sounds good.
David?
All right. Barani mistakenly sent me a question. So regarding summer eligibility, the financial package will appear 72 hours after. And what section does she particularly look at to distinguish the difference she owes?
So there's a pending financial aid, and I will share another link that I find very helpful that also comes along with a video. And it really walks students through the process of looking at their pending financial aid by term. And let me just put it in here. And what it does, it will show you exactly how much aid you're receiving for the summer, and then your charges for the summer, and if there are any balances left over, what that would be. Shamika asks, hello, will CUNY cap funding be impacted? David, could you speak to that?
I'm sorry, what was the question?
About CUNY cap funding.
Well, CUNY cap funding isn't from financial aid. So honestly, that is something that we have to wait till after June, because CUNY cap funding is actually CA funding. So in order to be a CUNY cap, you have to also sort of get a job on one of the campuses, and so it really is campus-based budget. So that's something that I'll have to actually follow up with, and I'll put that, I'll follow up with everyone in the group. Well, particularly those who going into grad school. The other thing is, Marcus, if you and Randall could resend me those links, only because I can't copy and paste the links. Yeah.
Sure.
And I will just send it to everyone. Shamika, what I will do is I will get you the answer to that CUNY cap question, because it really is a good question. So there's a question from Narayan.
So just one more question, just making sure I understand. If I choose no credit option and I successfully complete at least 6 credits, then my financial aid won't be impacted. Yes, it will not be impacted. If it is in terms of that progress that I mentioned about have you earned enough of your attempted credits in your GPA, we'll reach out to you with a form. You submit the form, get it back to us, and we'll restore your aid.
And Narayan asked about income adjustment for FAFSA.
Okay, that's a really great question. So we have our income adjustment process up now. David, I'll send you that link as well.
Okay.
So you definitely need to meet with your financial aid advisor for that, because that is a more sort of, I guess, involved process where you need to get some advising from our financial aid professionals. You will need to submit documentation of change of income, whether it be through loss of income, or unfortunately at these times we have to consider you know, the passing of a loved one and the impacts that that may have on a family income. So that requires a lot more documentation and personal statements. So we have that entire process online. So we are meeting the needs of having to work remotely and to safeguard our students. And I'll share that link with David as well, but that we expect to be doing quite a bit more what we call income adjustments or professional judgments over the next year.
Does anybody else have any quick, I want to say last minute, any other questions that you have in mind? Do you have a question, Marcus? Oh, there you go.
There's my email.
And for anybody who is watching this recording later, the email is mrichardson@brooklyn.cuny.edu.
Okay.
And Marcus will also be joining us next week, Tuesday, as we discuss more in depth the credit, no credit grade options at our event during common hours next Tuesday. Everyone should have received those emails as well. So if you have any questions that may have come up over the weekend, you can come back and ask him those questions. If nobody else has any questions, you know, we appreciate you all attending. We appreciate all the questions, and we definitely look forward to seeing you all Tuesday to
David, we
clarify
have another question.
Questions you may have.
We have another question, David.
Oh, we
Yeah,
do?
yeah, it's from me. I'm actually having trouble submitting a verification. It's in regards for confirming that I had not filed my taxes on 2018, and the IRS is currently closed, so I've been having a tough time communicating with them. I was told that I was to go to the financial aid page on Brooklyn College and to file a special circumstance form.
Okay, let me clarify that, because we've been getting a lot of those questions. So due to impacts for the, you know, of course, you know, getting to an IRS office or the IRS being able to provide what we call non-filing letters, because you didn't file taxes in 2018, the Department of Education requires through verification for certain students that we confirm that. So you can do that online. And I'll send all of those links to David. If you can't get that statement of non-filer online, then you can submit the verification, and in lieu of the when you click on the upload option for either your tax returns or tax return transcripts or your non-filer statement would go, you simply upload a screenshot of that you've gone to the website and you've had trouble receiving it, and then we will continue to process accordingly. And at that point, they will also reach out to you for that statement where you're just writing that you've attempted to receive it, you've been having trouble getting it through the IRS, and you submit that and we will process your verification.
What if I had already submitted it on the special circumstance form?
That's fine. We'll reach out to you, and if they need anything else in order to process, they'll let you know.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Oba has a question about how will it affect payments for the semester. I'm not sure if you can answer that, Marcus, or if I would have to follow up with Bursa and then just add it to the email.
Yeah, I'm not in terms of payments on a payment plan or payments for any outstanding balances. Could you clarify a bit more?
Oh, Oba, if you're there, can you clarify by, okay, payment plan, okay. If you're able to unmute your speaker, just explain a little bit, Oba.
Oh, so the payment plan. So I strongly recommend that you reach out to BC Bursar at brooklyn.cuny.edu, and they can put you in touch with someone regarding any sort of payment plan accommodations that may be available right now.
All right, and so I believe it's Thering. So we will actually be posting this recording on our BLMI Facebook page, and also more likely as well as on Instagram TV, the IGTV. So what we can do is we can also tag the BC 411, Brooklyn College 411, and have them reposted as well. So we can do that as well. Hopefully that answered your question there. So does anyone else have any questions? Okay. Where do I get the link for income adjustments, and how would I meet with a Fafsa advisor if college is closed?
So I mentioned earlier that the income adjustment links are on the Brooklyn College website on our forms section, and you can also schedule an appointment with your financial aid advisor through the BC web portal using the FAST advisor scheduling tool. And all of those links will be shared with David, and they will send it out at the end of the video session.
Okay. All right. So I'm gonna leave the floor open for about 10 seconds to give you enough time to type a question. If not, then we'll just close up the session. And like I said, we will be here again, myself, Marcus, Mr. Clark, and representatives from the registrar as well as the CAS office on Tuesday to discuss the credit, no credit, grading options, as well as, answer some more questions on how that might affect the financial aid.